Lucas Montgomery was one of the wealthiest billionaires in the country, living a life filled with enormous business deals, luxury, and constant social engagements. With a vast financial empire under his control, Lucas owned everything most people could only dream of: grand estates, expensive cars, and an unmatched reputation. However, behind this perfect exterior was a deep void in his heart. Despite having it all, Lucas felt something was missing in his life. He had spent his entire existence building his empire, yet never felt truly satisfied. Each deal, every meeting, every step forward in his career seemed to only widen the emptiness he felt. Day after day, Lucas immersed himself in work. He attended extravagant parties and socialized with individuals who could further his business interests, but he couldn't shake the overwhelming loneliness that plagued him. He couldn't remember the last time he genuinely felt happy. The emptiness could not be filled with money, power, or fame. One Friday evening, after a long and exhausting week of meetings, Lucas decided to step out of his usual routine. He wanted to try something different, to find some peace and quiet. Instead of heading to the high-end restaurants he frequented, he drove to a quiet neighborhood, a place filled with small eateries known for serving simple yet delicious meals. He picked a modest restaurant tucked away behind a row of shops, a place with no fame or glamour, but with an inviting, peaceful ambiance. As he sat at the table, Lucas couldn't help but feel the stark contrast between this space and the luxurious ones he usually frequented. Everything here was humble. No loud laughter or conversations about big deals. Only the soft sounds of patrons quietly enjoying their meals and the gentle golden glow of the lights casting a warm hue on the old wooden tables. Although this atmosphere felt foreign to him, Lucas found himself sensing a calmness he could not find in his extravagant life. While sipping his wine, Lucas glanced out the window. Beneath the streetlights, he saw a group of homeless children sitting outside, their thin clothes inadequate against the cold, gazing longingly at the restaurant. One small child, no older than 6, sat closest to the window, huddling against the chill with tiny hands wrapped tightly around their body. These children appeared to have nowhere to go, no one to care for them, and could only sit there, looking at the full plates of food inside the restaurant, food they would never be able to touch. As Lucas silently watched, a sense of unease began to creep into his heart. He could help them, couldn't he? But then, a thought quickly crossed his mind. I have a busy life. How could I possibly help? He told himself that the world was too vast and he couldn't help everyone. Despite the heartbreaking scene outside, Lucas continued with his meal, his mind focused on his own priorities. However, something shifted when Claire, his waitress, walked by. Claire was a simple woman, her long hair flowing down and a warm smile constantly present on her face. She was no stranger to hardship. Born into a poor family, Claire understood the feeling of lacking. When she saw the children outside, her heart ached. She couldn't just let them sit there, hungry and cold. Without a second thought, Claire quickly walked up to the manager and spoke to him briefly. She then made her way to the kitchen and emerged moments later with plates of hot food. She walked outside and gently set the food down in front of the children. At first, they hesitated, unsure if they could trust her, but as they saw the warmth and kindness in her eyes, they slowly accepted the food. Lucas, sitting at his table, witnessed this simple act of kindness. An unexpected wave of emotion flooded over him. The combination of his sympathy for the children and admiration for Claire's selfless gesture made him rethink his life. He had never seen anyone so willing to help others without expecting anything in return. Claire's act, though small, held profound meaning, and it made Lucas feel ashamed of his own indifference. Lucas sat still, his eyes fixed on Claire as she returned to the children, offering them the warm meals with a gentle smile. There was something deeply moving about the way she interacted with them. No hesitation, no pity, just pure kindness. It was a simple act, yet to Lucas it felt like something extraordinary. It was almost as if Claire had done something that had become foreign to him, a reminder that humanity still existed in a world where wealth and power often overshadowed compassion. As he watched her, Lucas felt an unfamiliar pang in his chest. He had seen kindness before, of course, but not in such an unassuming, genuine form. His life had been filled with business deals, competitive ventures, and complex strategies, But in all of that, he had never experienced the deep, raw compassion that Claire seemed to offer so effortlessly. It was as though, in that moment, Lucas realized how detached he had become from the world around him. He had been so consumed by his own success, so focused on accumulating wealth, that he had forgotten the simple power of giving. After the children had eaten their fill, Claire walked back inside, and Lucas, without thinking, stood up. He hadn't planned on doing anything, but something inside him urged him to approach her. He made his way to the counter where she was cleaning up. As she looked up, surprised to see him approaching, Lucas cleared his throat and spoke. "Excuse me, Claire," he began, his voice carrying a softness he wasn't accustomed to. "I just wanted to say what you did out there with the children. It was incredible. I've never seen someone act with such selflessness." Claire was taken aback. She wasn't used to receiving praise for such a simple gesture. She had only done what she believed was right. She smiled politely, unsure of how to respond. "Thank you," she said softly, a bit unsure of herself. "I just couldn't stand to see them go hungry. They're just kids, after all." Lucas nodded, his mind racing. He wasn't sure why he felt such a strong connection to this moment, but he couldn't shake the feeling that something had changed inside him. It wasn't just admiration for her kindness. It was as if Claire had awakened something dormant in him, something that had been buried beneath the weight of his career and his wealth. "You have a rare gift," Lucas continued, his tone more earnest now. "You don't realize it, but the way you care for people, the way you see them, it's rare, and it's needed. I'm not sure if you know how much of an impact you can have." Claire blinked, slightly stunned by his words. She wasn't used to receiving such recognition, especially not from someone like Lucas Montgomery. He was, after all, a billionaire, someone whose life seemed worlds apart from hers. And yet, here he was, standing before her, speaking with a sincerity she had rarely encountered. I I don't know what to say," Claire said, her voice quiet. "I'm just doing my job. I'm not doing anything special." Lucas looked at her, his expression thoughtful. He could see the doubt in her eyes, the hesitance to accept praise. It was clear that Claire had no idea of the magnitude of her actions, but Lucas did. He knew exactly how important that small act of kindness was, and as he stood there, looking at her, he made a decision. "I want to help you," he said, his voice firm. "I want to help you make a bigger impact. You have the potential to do so much more than you realize." The words hung in the air between them. Claire stared at him, unsure whether she had heard correctly. "Help me," she repeated, blinking in confusion. I don't understand. I'm just a waitress. I don't know what you mean." Lucas took a deep breath, gathering his thoughts. He hadn't expected to speak so openly, but something about Claire's humility made him want to be honest. "I've spent my life accumulating wealth, but I've never felt truly fulfilled. I've built an empire, but it's all felt empty. What you did out there with the children, it made me realize that I've been focusing on the wrong things. I've been so caught up in power and money that I've forgotten what really matters." Claire listened intently, unsure how to process his words. She had always known that the world of the rich and powerful was a different one, but hearing someone like Lucas admit to feeling lost was something she had never expected. "I've been looking for meaning, Claire," Lucas continued, his voice quieter now, "and I think I found it in you, not just in the act itself, but in the way you see people, the way you care. I don't know how to explain it, but I think you have the ability to change lives more than you realize." Claire felt a knot form in her stomach. She had never seen herself as someone who could change anything, let alone the lives of others. She had always done what she could, but never thought it was enough. Now, here was a billionaire, a man with the world at his feet, telling her that she had something special, that she could make a difference. "I want to help you build something, Claire," Lucas said, his eyes locking onto hers, "something that will make a real impact, a foundation, a place where children like the ones you helped tonight can have a chance at a better life, and I want you to lead it." Claire's heart raced. This was insane. A foundation? Lead it? She could hardly believe it. "I don't know anything about running a foundation," she stammered, her voice trembling. "I'm just a waitress. How could I do something like that?" Lucas smiled, a glimmer of confidence in his eyes. "I believe in you, Claire. You have something that can't be taught in any boardroom or business school. Your heart, your compassion, those are things money can't buy. And I want to help you make a difference, to help you build something that will truly matter. The room felt suddenly too small, and Claire felt a wave of disbelief wash over her. She couldn't fathom what was being offered, yet she knew this was an opportunity she couldn't ignore. For the first time in her life, she felt as though someone saw her for who she truly was. Not just a waitress, but someone with the potential to change the world. "I don't know what to say," Claire whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "But I want to try." Lucas smiled. "That's all I'm asking." The days that followed were a whirlwind for Claire. What had started as a simple act of kindness had now evolved into something far beyond her comprehension. She had spent most of her life just trying to get by, working long hours, taking care of herself, and doing her best to help those around her. But now, Lucas Montgomery, one of the wealthiest men in the world, had approached her with an offer that was almost too unbelievable to accept: to lead a foundation that would change the lives of children in need. Claire's mind raced with doubt. How could she possibly do this? She had no experience running a foundation, no background in business, no knowledge of what it took to create something of that scale. She was just a waitress, a woman who had spent her days serving food to strangers and trying to make a difference in small ways. How could she lead something as important as this? But as she stood in front of the mirror in her small apartment, she couldn't shake the idea that this could be her chance to do something bigger. This could be her opportunity to make a real impact on the world, to help children who had been forgotten by society. And the thought of it made her heart beat faster. When Claire arrived at the office Lucas had set up for her, she felt a sense of nervous anticipation. It was a small office, nothing extravagant, but there was a quiet sense of purpose in the air. Lucas had arranged everything. He had already hired a team of experts to guide her through the process, people who knew how to set up a foundation, how to get the legal documents in order, how to navigate the complexities of philanthropy. But Claire, despite their experience, would be the heart of the mission. She would be the face of the foundation, the one who inspired people to give and to believe in the cause. Lucas was there to meet her, of course. As always, he radiated confidence, but this time, Claire noticed something different. There was a warmth in his eyes, a sense of genuine care that made her believe he truly wanted to see her succeed. It wasn't just about money for him. It was about start creating something meaningful, something that could make a difference in the lives of people who needed it the most. "I'm glad you're here, Claire," Lucas said, his voice steady. "I know this is a big step for you, but I'm confident that you're the right person for this job. You have the heart to lead this foundation, and I believe in you." Claire looked at him, feeling both reassured and overwhelmed at the same time. "But what if I fail? What if I'm not good enough?" Lucas smiled, taking a step closer. "You're already doing something extraordinary. You've already proven you have what it takes to make a difference. You don't need to be perfect, you just need to care. And that's what matters the most." For the first time since their first meeting, Claire felt a surge of confidence. She wasn't sure what the future held, but one thing was certain: she couldn't back away from this opportunity. She couldn't let doubt hold her back from trying to make a real difference in the world. "I'll do my best," Claire said quietly, her voice steady. "I don't know how to do all of this, but I'm willing to learn." "That's all I ask," Lucas replied, his tone sincere. "Together we can build something incredible." The days turned into weeks as Claire settled into her new role. She had no experience leading a foundation, but her passion for helping children kept her motivated. With Lucas's guidance and the support of the team he had assembled for her, Claire began to see the first steps of her vision coming to life. They worked tirelessly, brainstorming ideas, securing funding, and reaching out to partners who could help bring their mission to fruition. One afternoon, as Claire sat at her desk reviewing some proposals, she received a phone call that would change everything. The voice on the other end was Lucas's. "Claire," he said, his voice calm but urgent. "I've just received word that we've been given a significant donation. It's a game changer. With this money, we can take the foundation to the next level. We'll be able to provide not just food and shelter for these children, but also education, healthcare, and long-term support. But there's a catch. Claire's heart skipped a beat. What's the catch? Lucas's voice softened. The money comes with conditions. They want you to be the one to speak at the fundraising gala next month. They want you to stand up in front of hundreds of people and tell your story. Tell them why this foundation matters, why these children matter. They want to hear from you, Claire. They want to see the heart behind this cause. The weight of his words settled heavily on Claire's shoulders. She had never been in the spotlight before. The thought of standing in front of a room full of powerful people and sharing her story terrified her. What if she wasn't good enough? What if she couldn't convey the importance of the work they were doing? But as she sat there, her mind racing, she thought of the children, the ones she had seen outside the restaurant, the ones who had no one to care for them. She thought of all the lives that could be changed by the foundation, of the children who would be given a chance at a better future. She couldn't back away from this now. She had to be the one to speak for them. I'll do it, Claire said, her voice shaking slightly. I'll speak at the gala. Lucas's voice was warm with approval. I knew you would. You have the strength to do this, Claire. I believe in you. As she hung up the phone, Claire felt a surge of both fear and excitement. This was the moment she had been waiting for. She wasn't just a waitress anymore. She was the leader of a movement that could change the world for the better. The pressure was mounting, but with Lucas's unwavering support, Claire felt more determined than ever. This was her chance to make a real impact, and no matter how terrifying it seemed, she would take it. The weeks leading up to the gala were a blur for Claire. Every waking moment seemed to be consumed by preparations for her speech, and with Lucas's guidance, the foundation was starting to take on a life of its own. Claire had always believed that kindness was the key to changing the world, but now she was learning how much more it took to make a real, lasting difference. She had been thrust into the role of a leader, and while the weight of the responsibility sometimes felt overwhelming, she couldn't shake the sense that this was where she was meant to be. The office had transformed too. The walls, once bare and sterile, were now adorned with posters of smiling children, pictures from the shelter programs they were already running, and documents outlining the goals they had set. Claire had been involved in every decision, from choosing the right people to join the team, to discussing the types of education programs that would provide a long-term impact for the children they wanted to help. But it wasn't just about the paperwork or the plans. It was the people she was meeting, the children whose lives were being affected. One day, Claire had gone to one of the shelters they were funding, and it had been an eye-opening experience. She had met with a young girl named Mia, who had been living on the streets before being taken in by the foundation. Mia had a brightness in her eyes, a spark of hope that Claire hadn't seen in most of the children living in poverty. She shared her dream of becoming a teacher one day, of helping other children who had experienced the same hardships. It was these moments that kept Claire going, moments that reminded her of why she had taken on this responsibility in the first place. As the days passed, Claire's confidence grew. She was no longer the unsure waitress who had doubted her own potential. She had become someone who could make a difference, someone who could inspire change. But even as she embraced her new role, she couldn't escape the nagging feeling that she wasn't ready. The upcoming gala loomed large in her mind, and despite the team's encouragement, Claire knew that standing before a room full of powerful people, sharing her story, would be the biggest challenge she had ever faced. Lucas, as always, was there to support her. He had insisted on helping her prepare for the speech, even though he knew she could do it on her own. He wanted her to feel confident, to believe in the power of her words. We'll work on it together, he had said. You don't need to do this alone. In the quiet moments before the gala, Claire found herself reflecting on how far she had come. It had only been a few months since she had been a waitress, serving meals and wondering if she would ever have a chance to do something that mattered. Now she was leading a foundation that was changing lives. She had gone from doubting herself to standing at the helm of something that could help thousands of children across the country. And yet, as she stared at the polished mirror in her dressing room, the nerves still threatened to overwhelm her. Why me? She whispered to herself. I'm just a waitress. I don't belong here. But in her heart, she knew the answer. It wasn't her past that mattered. It was her heart, her compassion, and her unwavering belief in making the world a better place. She wasn't just someone who had been given a chance. She was someone who had earned it. And tonight, she would prove that. The gala was an unforgettable night. The venue, an opulent ballroom with towering chandeliers and elegantly dressed guests, was filled with the kind of wealth and influence Claire had only ever seen in the glossy pages of magazines. It was overwhelming, to say the least. The rich and powerful mingled, exchanging business cards and discussing deals that Claire couldn't even begin to comprehend. She stood at the edge of the room, her hand shaking slightly as she sipped the water Lucas had handed her. You're going to do great, Lucas said, his voice full of quiet encouragement. Just be yourself. The people here need to hear your story. But Claire wasn't sure if she was ready. She had rehearsed her speech over and over, but the thought of speaking to such an influential audience, of standing in front of people who held the keys to making her foundation a success, filled her with a sense of dread. Her palms were sweaty, and her heart raced. She wanted to make a difference, but the pressure of the moment threatened to crush her. Remember, Lucas continued, his voice gentle, this isn't about perfection. It's about sharing your truth. People will connect with that. They'll believe in your cause because they'll see the passion you have. Claire nodded, but the doubts still lingered. What if they didn't believe her? What if they didn't understand why this cause mattered? As the gala progressed, Claire watched as people spoke at the podium, sharing their polished speeches about philanthropy and giving. She couldn't help but feel out of place. She was a simple woman with a mission, but these people were seasoned philanthropists and business tycoons, many of whom had given millions to causes just like hers. What could she possibly say to stand out? Finally, it was her turn. Lucas gave her a reassuring smile as she made her way to the podium. The crowd quieted, and all eyes turned to her. Claire's throat tightened, and for a moment she felt as though she might crumble under the weight of the gaze upon her. But then she saw Mia's face flash in her mind, along with the faces of all the other children who had been waiting for something to change their lives. The children she had promised to fight for. Claire took a deep breath and began to speak. I stand before you tonight, not as a philanthropist, not as a businesswoman, but as someone who was once just like the children we aim to help, she began. I wasn't born into wealth. I wasn't handed opportunities, but I was given a chance to change someone's life. And that's why I'm here tonight. I'm here for the children who have been forgotten. I'm here for the ones who have no voice, for the ones who are fighting every day to survive. She paused, her voice steadying as she continued. This foundation is not just about providing food or shelter. It's about offering hope. Hope that these children can grow up and have a future. Hope that they can become teachers, doctors, leaders. Hope that they can break free from the cycle of poverty. And it's my honor to be here tonight, standing with all of you, to tell you that we have the power to make that change happen. The room was silent for a moment, and then a ripple of applause filled the air. Claire felt her heart swell with emotion, and for the first time in a long while, she believed that she could do this. She wasn't just a waitress anymore. She was a leader, a beacon of hope for children who needed it the most. And as the applause continued, Claire knew that this was only the beginning. The days following the gala were a whirlwind for Claire. The media coverage of her speech spread quickly, and soon she found herself answering calls from people who wanted to collaborate with her foundation. Donations poured in, and she felt the weight of the world shift in her favor. It was as though everything she had worked so hard for was finally falling into place. But just as things seemed to be on track, disaster struck. A critical funding stream for the educational programs the foundation had been working on was unexpectedly delayed. The grants they had relied on for the next phase of their programs were held up due to bureaucratic red tape. And without this funding, many of their planned initiatives would be postponed or even canceled. Claire received the news late one afternoon, and for the first time in weeks, the ever-present weight on her shoulders seemed unbearable. The staff at the foundation worked tirelessly to try and find a solution, but with no backup funding in sight, Claire could feel the panic creeping in. This was the moment that would define the future of the foundation, and she wasn't sure they were going to make it. Lucas, ever the steady rock in her life, noticed the change in Claire's demeanor. He found her sitting in her office, staring at the paperwork that seemed to mock her from the desk. "I can't do this," Claire admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "Everything we've built could fall apart. The kids are counting on us, and I don't know how to fix this." Lucas sat down next to her, placing a comforting hand on her shoulder. "We've been through worse, Claire. We'll figure this out, just like we always do. You can't let this defeat you." But Claire wasn't sure he understood. She had poured her heart and soul into this project, and now it seemed as though it was all slipping away. "I don't know what to do," Claire whispered. "I don't have the resources to fix this. I don't have enough influence." "You do," Lucas replied, his eyes unwavering. "You have more influence than you think. You've already changed so many lives. Let's go to the people who believe in us, people who want to make a difference. We'll find a way." Claire didn't have time to dwell on her doubts. The next morning, she reached out to William Reed, the billionaire whose support had been instrumental in the foundation's creation. She had been hesitant to ask for his help again, but this was a crisis they couldn't overcome without significant backing. Within hours, William responded. "I'll take care of it," he said simply. "Consider it done." Claire's heart swelled with relief. She didn't fully understand how William was going to solve the problem, but she knew that with his help, they could weather the storm. His commitment to the cause wasn't just financial, it was personal. And Claire knew that meant more than anything. True to his word, William used his network and influence to secure the necessary funding, bypassing the red tape that had held up the grants. He personally called in favors, speaking with individuals who shared his passion for education and children's welfare. In a matter of days, the foundation's funding crisis was resolved. When Claire received the news, she felt a mixture of relief and gratitude. But as much as she appreciated William's help, it was the reminder of what truly mattered that struck her the hardest. It wasn't the money or the power that had saved them. It was the relationships, the connections, the people who believed in the mission. And more importantly, it was her own resilience and determination that had gotten them this far. With the funding crisis behind them, Claire's foundation was back on track, stronger than ever. The education programs were now fully funded, and the first group of children to benefit from them had started their studies. Claire could hardly believe the progress they had made in such a short amount of time. What began as a small act of kindness had blossomed into something monumental. The staff at the foundation worked tirelessly to ensure that the programs were implemented effectively, and Claire remained deeply involved in every decision. She continued to visit the shelters, to speak with the children, and to connect with the families they were helping. It was during these visits that Claire saw firsthand the impact they were making. Children who had once been lost and forgotten were now thriving, their futures brighter than they had ever been. Mia, the young girl Claire had met at the shelter months ago, had become a symbol of the foundation's success. She had excelled in her studies and was now mentoring other children who had arrived at the shelter. Claire couldn't help but smile when she saw Mia helping a new group of kids with their homework, her dream of becoming a teacher, now more attainable than ever. One day, as Claire sat in her office, a letter arrived. It was from Mia, who had just been accepted into a prestigious university on a full scholarship. The letter was simple, but the words hit Claire harder than anything else she had experienced. Mia's future was no longer uncertain. She was on a path to greatness, and Claire had played a part in it. As the foundation continued to grow, Claire's belief in the ripple effect of kindness was solidified. The children who had once been forgotten, who had once seemed hopeless, were now the next generation of leaders, thinkers, and dreamers. Claire had given them the tools they needed to succeed, but more importantly, she had given them something that couldn't be measured in dollars or resources: hope. And as Claire stood in front of the podium at the next gala, the room full of influential guests, she knew that her journey had only just begun. The foundation had changed lives, Yes, but it was also changing her. She wasn't just leading an organization anymore. She was living a life of purpose, one that was making a real difference. I stand before you tonight, Claire said, her voice steady and strong, because I believe in the power of kindness. I believe in the power of one person to make a difference. And I believe that each of us, in our own way, can create a ripple that will change the world. The applause that followed was thunderous, and Claire knew in that moment that the ripple she had started was only getting stronger. She had found her purpose, and she would continue to fight for the children, for the families, and for the world that needed her. And as the evening drew to a close, Claire glanced at the crowd, her heart full of gratitude. She was no longer just the waitress who had once wondered if she would ever be enough. She was now the leader of a movement that would continue to grow, to inspire and to change the lives of countless others. Her journey was just beginning. As Claire looked out over the bustling city from her office window, she couldn't help but reflect on the incredible journey that had brought her here. From the quiet, uncertain days in the humble restaurant to standing on stage, surrounded by people whose lives she had touched, she knew her story was just one of many that began with a single act of kindness. She had learned that success wasn't measured by wealth or accolades, but by the difference you made in the lives of others. And as her foundation continued to grow, she realized that the ripples of change she had set in motion would reach far beyond her own life. The road ahead would not always be easy. There would be more challenges, more obstacles, and moments of doubt. But Claire now knew that she was never truly alone. The kindness she had shared, the bonds she had built, and the lives she had changed were her greatest rewards. With a heart full of hope and a deep belief in the power of compassion, Claire stepped forward, ready to face whatever came next. Because in the end, it wasn't the grandeur of her accomplishments that mattered most. It was the lives she had touched and the legacy of love and hope she would leave behind. And as long as she had the strength to carry on, Claire knew that her journey of making the world a better place would never end. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen to this story and watch the video. Your support means the world to us. If you enjoyed the journey we've shared, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more inspiring content. Your feedback and engagement help us continue bringing you stories that inspire and uplift. Remember, kindness has the power to change lives, and together, we can make the world a better place. Stay tuned for more, and until next time, take care and keep spreading positivity. Like, subscribe, and share the love. Thank you again for being a part of this journey.